Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at camera matching in Maya using a tool called fSpy. Using this technique will help you create camera match scenes from your reference images that you can use for modeling environments, vehicles, or props. Currently, fSpy is a standalone camera matching tool that has Blender integration, so we'll cover a workflow that takes us through fSpy, Blender, then Maya. I've made this very straightforward, so don't worry if you've never used Blender before. So with that, let's get started. Alright, so let's just get started. If we take a look at what fSpy is, it's a free open source still image camera matching tool that you can use to, camera match reference images and then use that for your modeling. Here's a quick, 10-15 second video on how you can use it at a high level. And I'd highly recommend taking a look at the website, taking a look at the documentation, because I'll just be covering it from a very high level and basically just showing you how I use it. All right, so you can just go to fspy.io, download it, install it, very simple, straightforward, and then go ahead and open it up. So here we have just fSpy, which is the standard starting project. All right, so what we want to do is just grab our reference image. In this case, I'll be using this image right here and drag that right into fSpy. And you can see here that we're kind of, we have these gizmos that we can use to set the perspective based off the axes and orientation. You can kind of see that I already had mine initially set up, but you can work with all the different axes, so X, Y, and Z, and it uses typically the number of vanishing points, right, which is just a term used for perspective matching. All right, and you can see that you can change the different axes or the vanishing points here. You can see that X is kind of the bottom here. We have Y that we can use either as our vertical or horizontal axes, and then same thing with Z. All right, now the key thing here is, kind of taking a look at what we have inside of Maya. Maya is Y up, Blender is Z up, but that's not a big deal. We can just quickly rotate. But I'm going to stick with just having Y up since we're going to be primarily using Maya to render. All right, so now that we have this set up, we can take a look at using, X and Y. So if we look at X as our depth here, we can go ahead and kind of set this like so, and start putting these lines here based off the vanishing points, all right, and based off the perspective lines of the image. So if I go ahead now and use this for our Y, we can go ahead and make some adjustments here. Now, what's nice is you can kind of see, you can have the image, the dimmed image here, and disable dimming there. And then you can also hold Shift and as you're left click dragging, and it'll give you a nice zoomed in version, so you can be very precise here. So what I'll start with is just kind of using these door frames as our Y axes, our vertical axes here. So I can go ahead and just kind of set this like so, and I'll just make sure that it's kind of nice and parallel, which we'll take a look at pros and cons of keeping things parallel versus, moving them around the reference image. So you can see I'm just kind of moving and trying to keep it on the outer part of the crown molding here. All right, so we get something like this so far, and if I actually go ahead and turn on focal length, you can kind of see what we have. Now you can see that the y-axis is facing down, so if you wanted to, you can just simply flip that there, and then you have your y-axis going in the up orientation. Then I can go ahead and just, left click to drag the gizmo around and kind of move that around the scene just to make sure that things are looking good. There's some nice tools in here as well where you can use, image midpoint, which is what we're currently using, or you can even use a third vanishing point, which in this case, you can use maybe the horizontal x-axis, horizontal z-axis here. So you can see I'm kind of just moving some things around using the lines of the image. So again, I'm using the door frames, I'm using the wood flooring going all the way down, and you can see that they're all vanishing towards this single point here. All right, so just be careful. Sometimes it does, if you don't have the right camera sensor information, and if you're using third vanishing point, you will get some very, very high focal lengths here, which almost will turn it orthographic. So for the most part, I typically just stick with using image midpoint. And so this gives me, kind of what I expect. Right now we're looking at about, 20 a focal length of 20. Now, if you get things like this, where you're moving around and you get this, image rotation error, the configuration rotation determinant, it's basically saying that it can't find a vanishing point based on the angles of these, the axes here. So I can just simply, just make sure to adjust these and try to get these as close and as best as I can, and eventually just make sure that these are aligned properly. What also helps is to have different, extremes of the image. So if we have the door frame here, I can go ahead maybe and grab this part, the y-axis, and go towards the back or towards the end of the image to get a nice shot here. And there we go. We can kind of just continue to work with that until we get something that looks pretty good. All right, so we'll just keep moving that, making adjustments. Maybe I might try to use the roof here, or the ceiling, part of the ceiling, as we're doing this. So you can continue to refine and adjust that. Okay, and the other thing that I like to use is a box right here. So if you go to 3D Guide, you can kind of use this box and it'll let you kind of know how it's kind of fitting into the scene that you have so far. And you can make some adjustments there. And it's a really nice tool. Again, if you kind of flip the axes, you can always adjust it. And then the last thing I want to do is just to kind of use this XYZ gizmo and put it, along the main parts of the image, making sure that things look good and that things look properly aligned. And if I might need to make some adjustments throughout the image. All right. So all in all, things are looking pretty good. I'm liking where everything's at. So once I'm done with this, I can go ahead and begin exporting. Great, so just some final tweaks there. And I ended up at about a 26 millimeter focal length, which is exactly kind of where I figured it would land, somewhere between 25, 30, 35 millimeter focal length, since we're in kind of this confined hallway and you'd need typically a wider lens to capture all this information. All right, so once we get that, we want to simply go to File, Save As, or Save This, and then you can go ahead and save this wherever you need to. So I'll go ahead and just save this as this environment cam match demo in my assets folder. So I'll go ahead and save that. And then once we do that, then we can go ahead and take a look at bringing this out of fSpy into Blender and then into Maya. So if you haven't used Blender before, it's a very, very simple install. I'm sure everyone's heard of it. Go ahead and just download Blender from their download page. And it's a very small exe. I remember when I first downloaded it a year or two ago, I was pretty surprised that it's less than a couple hundred megs, which makes it very easy to download and install anywhere, unlike some other Autodesk softwares which take quite a while and are gigabytes, right? Then, once you have Blender installed, you want to make sure that you also have the fSpy Blender zip. This is the integration, this is the plugin that we'll be using, or what's called the add-on inside of Blender. So you want to make sure that you also have that. So with Blender downloaded, with the fSpy Blender add-on downloaded, let's go ahead now and open up Blender. So if I go ahead and open up Blender, I have just the default scene, which is the good old Blender cube here. And the first thing I want to do is load in the fSpy add-on. So you want to go to Edit, Preferences. All right. So once you got Preferences here, you'd want to go to the Add-ons tab here, and then go to Install. And then with Install, we'd want to go ahead and find our folder that has the download. So if I go ahead now, bring this over, I'd want to go ahead and jump to my environment lightings folder and go to install. So you can see, there it is. This is just the downloaded zip from the link that I just showed, and I'll be sure to provide all the links down in the description below. So you go ahead and install add-on, and once you do that, you can now go ahead and search for fSpy. And there you go. And I already have that loaded. So once you're good there, you can go ahead and close it. Then you go to File, Import, and then you see fSpy here. All right, so go ahead and hit Import fSpy. And then again, we want to go ahead and take a look at finding the folder. And I saved it in my assets folder, and I just called it a demo. So I want to go ahead and grab that and go ahead and import fSpy project. All right, so there we go. So it imports into the project fine, and we have the camera positioned properly. or imported properly, and now we're just going to simply take this into Maya. That's it. We're just kind of using Blender right now as a middle point since there is no Maya plugin to import fSpy files, but it just makes sense just to simply use Blender to import it and then export it. So I'll go ahead and do File, Export FBX, and you'd want to make sure to not have anything selected. You can, delete the lights and the other camera so it doesn't confuse anything. Maybe just leave the cube there for orientation. So then I go ahead and do the export with nothing else selected, and I'll go ahead and export this out into the folder. I'll just go ahead and call this Blender fSpy demo and go ahead and just overwrite that and export that out. Great. So now that we've done that, we're all done with fSpy, we're all done with Blender, and then now we can just jump back into Maya. So if I go ahead and pull up Maya here, we're in a blank scene, ready to go. All right, so here we are in Maya, and now we're ready to bring in that FBX that we just imported or exported from Blender. So if I go ahead now and grab the Blender fSpy demo FBX, and then import that right into the file, and there we go. So now we have our cube, we have our camera, and what I want to do here is go ahead and just group these. All right, now I want to group these and then simply rotate these 90 degrees in the X. So I can just go ahead and type in X, 90 degrees in the X, and there we go. Now the next thing that I want to do is, I have this group here, environment camera match here, and I'll simply go ahead and set this up. I want to create a new panel here, so I'll just do the environment camera match here. And then I want to make this just my perspective cam. All right, so I can kind of move around and do what I need to do. Now the first thing, or the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and adjust the resolution, all right, of the image. So if you can go ahead and take a look, I can go to this image here, do a quick details on this, and we can see that it's 3701 by 4626. So I'll go ahead and adjust that and make sure that the image or the render settings is matching the aspect ratio. Now, I'm also using V-Ray for the demo, but you can follow along using any render engine. And we can go ahead down here and disable maintain width and height ratio. And I'll go ahead and type in, 3701 by 4626, re-enable maintain height and width ratio, and then set this to something much lower. As long as the aspect ratio is the same between the two images, I can lower this to something much more reasonable when we render. All right, so that's good because now watch what happens. If I didn't do that, then I'm going to enable resolution gate and then watch. Without that, and if this was set to a standard HD here, you'll kind of see that it would not be aligned with the cropping and the aspect ratio of the image. So again, you just want to make sure to just update that in your image here. So again, I'll set that to 3701, 4626, and then set this back to 1200. All right, great. So that's all I need to do in the render settings right now. And then the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and add the image plane. So I'll go ahead and import an image plane. I'll just use this icon here. And then you can see that I have the image right here, environment ref, in my source images folder. So go ahead and grab that, go ahead and hit open. And then it goes ahead and adds it in there. Now, the key thing I need to do here is start making some adjustments. So I'll hide the cube here. I don't need that anymore. And what I want to do now is select the image plane here by simply selecting in the viewport, hit Control A, and then you'll see that I have some options here. I want to make sure that it doesn't show up in the other viewports. So I'll disable or set this to looking through camera. Then if I scroll down, I want to also do fit to resolution gate. All right, so there. Now this is a 1:1 aspect ratio. It's filling up in the scene. Now I can start modeling based off of this. But there's one last thing I need to do, which is make sure I have a scale of reference. All right, now the scale of reference that I'm going to use is basically these doors. A lot of times you're going to have to just make assumptions to get pretty close in scale. But if I go ahead and generate or create a simple cube, I'm going to go ahead and just create, a standard 8-foot door here. All right, and if I go ahead in the channel box here and I can go ahead and height and type in 203 centimeters, which is 8 feet, and then I'll use a depth of 91, which is the width of a door, and then I'll just give this a little bit of width here. And then I can move this in position, right? Because I want to make sure that I put this in position here near this door, because that's basically what I'm going to be using as my scale of reference. This just helps to do this now, so I don't go through the process of modeling an entire environment and it turning out to be all in the incorrect scale, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and position that. You can see my camera here, and then I'm just going to bring that and just make some adjustments until I get this about right. All right, I went ahead and just put that in position there, and that's pretty good. It gives me a good sense of, you know, the size of this environment. We can see that it's pretty close, might be just slightly, ever so slightly off, but we're good for now. So now that I have that, you can just begin modeling, right? And I am now modeling with the confidence that I'm pretty close to this original scale of this environment. So I'll go ahead and really scale this ground plane up here and move it in position and just start, you know, getting it all set up with my environment. So I'll go ahead and hit 1 here. And now that I got that, I will go ahead, maximize this view and just begin, you know, moving things properly. So I'll move this further out in the X like so. And then now that I got that, I can, you know, make sure I get the sides proper, and we want to make sure to also bring that up, right? So you can see that it was way down below, which is why, again, you want a good scale of reference, right? So perspective is a little bit tricky if you're not careful. And I want to bring this up here to just about the bottom of the door, something like this. And then I can bring this back here, right? So it's not so much that it's, you know, being the length of it, right? It's the perspective that makes it looks like it's a lot further than it actually is. So then I start bringing everything in, and there we go. We got the nice ground floor properly aligned. You know, we can make a couple more minor adjustments here. Then once I do that, I can go ahead and, you know, hit Control E, extrude, and start to get the rest of the environment here. So I'll go ahead and kind of extrude this main part here for the back part, and then I'll hold Shift right click and multi-cut and just kind of add in this edge here, right? So I'm going ahead and just initially doing this rough block out here, and you can see I'm just moving this up like so. And then you can see things are looking pretty good. Things are pretty close. And I can go ahead and move some vertices, you know, getting this all nicely aligned, and make some adjustments here and move these out. But yeah, we got this. And then now what I can do, you know, is go ahead and start to do this cutout here. So I can do a, you know, Control E again, just a nice extrude. We can do kind of this scale in and the couple different axes, and we're going to just do this cutout here, and then I can do again G for repeat last and just move this back, right? Now this isn't entirely modeling tutorial on this environment, but I'm just showing you how I initially roughed this in. And then I can extrude this up because this is going to be the next floor, and then I can do a quick extrusion here and do a little bit of an offset so these planes don't overlap too much. There we go. So then I extrude that out and get something like this. Then what I want to do, of course, is go to Mesh, Display, Reverse. So flip those faces. Then to remove some of these normal artifacts or smoothing artifacts, I'll Shift right click, go to Harden. There we go. And then now you can see our window. We have our window here. You know, I can select these edges here. Simply, you know, maybe move these up. Well, maybe I'll grab these pieces here and move these up like so. And then now I can punch out that window. Boom. All right. So we're starting to look pretty good here. We're starting to get everything kind of roughly adjusted and positioned. And then now I can go ahead, you know, and do a quick test here. Add a V-Ray sun in sky. So I can go to the V-Ray overrides, environments, create sun, create sky. And then I can go ahead and, you know, add or position the sun, something like this. And we can do a quick test render to kind of see how everything's turning out. Now you need to make sure, of course, that if I stop this, I need to disable the image plane. So just simply hit the image plane icon here in the viewport. So now that that's gone, we're good, right? And if I actually bring that back, yep, we're good there. And I can go ahead and do a quick render. And of course, I need to turn on GI. So go ahead and turn on GI and then set your irradiance map, just low settings, just so it renders out really quick. And go ahead and do another render. And there we go. So now we can start to see everything kind of coming together with this rough block out with the kind of default settings here. And one side note is that you always want to make sure with your render camera is to lock the camera. And then also, just to be safe, is to go to View, Bookmarks, Edit Bookmarks, and then create a bookmark. This is just in case you may move your camera and things are off, and then you can always come back to your bookmark and reset it, and then you're back to where you need to. And this is just helpful if you accidentally shift and move your camera, and then you accidentally unlock it, right? So just something to help you later down the road, just in case you bump and move your camera. All right, so what I want to do now is I will go ahead and jump to that more refined scene where I was able to get a lot further on the modeling and lighting. So let's go ahead and open that up and take a look at what we got. So you can see here, same thing. I have my camera set up here. You can see that it's right there. And I also have, you know, the more refined modeling of the environment, a little bit cleaner. I was able to add in the windows up top. I was able to add in the stairwells, extrusions for the doors, and everything's lining up really well, really close. You know, even add the little kind of molding here on the bottom of the stairs here. And then just adding in some lights just to get a nicer looking render. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and bring this over here so we can take a look at the renders. And here's where we started with the reference image. And then here's where we ended up with the render with the camera matched render. So if I set this to B and we go ahead and kind of scrub across and we kind of take a look at what's going on, and we can see that things are starting to align really, really well. Obviously I don't have the archway on the doors done yet, but at least I have the main extrusions and I have the main cutout, and there's just more refinement that needs to happen. Everything's just a proxy right now. So all in all, I'm really happy with how things are looking, and you know, hopefully you guys found some benefit in taking a look at this workflow. And then the last thing I wanted to just add was when I started setting up the camera for this, I did have to recreate the camera here and then reapply all of the camera positioning and settings from the import that I brought in from Blender and fSpy. For whatever reason, Maya did not like me putting the V-Ray physical camera properties on the imported camera. So all I simply did was just copied over all the transforms, copied over the settings for the focal length, and then we were good to go. So just a little bit of a hiccup there, but after that, we were all set. So again, hopefully you guys found some benefit in this and enjoyed the workflow. So if you guys have any comments, feedback, critiques, drop them down below. You know, that always helps out the channel. Like and subscribe is always appreciated. So with that, take care, everyone. I'll see you around.